All right, greetings. I want to share with you some gospel jewels from Psalm 17 as we're going through God's Psalter, the book of Psalms, and with the express purpose to see Christ and Him crucified therein, and the gospel story, which is shown and repeated and set forth in from different angles and different psalms. Now we're down to Psalms 17, and I'll read to you. I'll read the whole psalm, and then we'll back up and just I'll consider basically a couple of things from this psalm, which have this evangelical important application for us, His people. All right, it begins a prayer of David. Hear the right, O Lord, attend unto my cry, give ear unto my prayer, that goeth not out of feigned lips. Let my sentence come forth from thy presence. Let thine eyes behold the things that are equal. Thou hast proved mine heart. Thou hast visited me in the night. Thou hast tried me, and shalt find nothing. I am purposed that my mouth shall not transgress. Concerning the works of men, by the word of thy lips I have kept me from the paths of the destroyer. Hold up my goings in thy paths, that my footsteps slip not. I have called upon thee, for thou wilt hear me, O God. Incline thine ear unto me, and hear my speech. Shew thy marvelous loving kindness, O thou that savest by thy right hand them which put their trust in thee from those that rise up against them. Keep me as the apple of the eye. Hide me under the shadow of thy wings, from the wicked that oppress me, from my deadly enemies who compass me about. They are enclosed in their own fat. With their mouth they speak proudly. They have now compassed us in our steps. They have set their eyes bound down to the earth, like as a lion that is greedy of his prey, and as it were a young lion lurking in secret places. Arise, O Lord, disappoint him, cast him down. Deliver my soul from the wicked, which is thy sword, from men which are thy hand, O Lord, from men of the world, which have their portion in this life, and whose belly thou fillest with thy hid treasure. They are full of children, and leave the rest of their substance to their babes. As for me, I will behold thy face in righteousness. I shall be satisfied when I awake with thy likeness. By the way, I preached on that last verse of this psalm, which is full of the gospel as far as the resurrection of Jesus Christ, our dear Lord. It was my last sermon, I believe, in the Moscow church I used to be part of. Anyway, but that was the kind of the Easter Eve, and I decided to deliver this little Christological message from this same Psalm 17. And I will mention that again, that this is the purpose of Christ's prayer, is to behold God's glory, to be satisfied with His image. But first, let's talk about the foundation, the basis of all prayer. It's interesting that in the King James, you have the first verse of Psalm 17, a prayer of David, hear the right, O Lord, attend unto my cry. And see, when it says hear the right, and some modern translations and paraphrases render this as hear the righteous cause, or even I plead, hear with the right attitude, render justice unto me because I'm in distress, and so forth. So they want to sort of soft pedal what this statement actually says, because literally it is hear the righteousness. Hear the righteousness, O Lord. Attend unto my cry, give ear unto my prayer, that goeth not of feigned lips. Let me read to you from Green's literal translation, which I heartily recommend for your reading, and it's kind of biased alongside of King James Bible. That would be a good supplement. So it says, it's very literal, very faithful to the text, and it's based upon the right body of manuscripts as well. It is the Textus Receptus text, not the modern, current, so-called critical editions. Anyways, it says a prayer of David, O Jehovah, because that's what the Lord means, that with a capital L, capital O, capital R, capital D, it is Jehovah, the covenant name. I am that I am. O Jehovah, hear righteousness. Listen to my cry. Give ear to my prayer, for it is not in lips of deceit. Unfeigned lips, says King James. But this is not lips of deceit, kind of communicates the idea more literally. And it will get your mind connected to what is said of Christ, that no guile was found on his lips. There was no no pretense. His words were not try to solicit favoritism from men. He would not try to elicit a favorable response from even men in high power, but would speak the truth in love, as so should we. But this is about Christ, and it becomes very evident if you study it as the text is actually put in the original. It's here righteousness. Now, the reason that the translators try to soft pedal is because for them it is unthinkable that David, the earthly David, would base his petition upon his righteousness. Otherwise, and sometimes you get that feel that, well, boy, that David, according to my innocence, deal with me, according to my righteousness that is in me, and so forth. And it appears to contradict what the New Testament so expressly says about man, that none is righteous, no, not one, and so forth. It debases man, but here we have almost a display of self-righteousness, but it is not that way. It is a prophecy, okay? It is a prophecy of Christ. David was not speaking about himself. Even Peter says that as much on the day of Pentecost, that David, when he said that thou shalt not leave my soul in hell, nor suffer the Holy One to undergo corruption, he did not speak of himself, because David, he served his generation, and he was gathered to his forefathers, and his sepulcher is with us to this day. But he spoke of Christ, of his resurrection, that God would not let his Holy One to see corruption. So here, righteousness. Listen to my prayer. And I have some notifications. Listen to my cry, give ear to my prayer, for it is not in lips of deceit. Let my judgment go out from your face, your eyes see uprightly. Again, I'm reading from the Green's Little Translation. So he appeals to his integrity and his righteousness. Let my judgment go out from your face. When we pray, we appeal to God's mercy. We're not, trying to build our petitions upon things that we do. Otherwise, that would be, on our part, just an audacious thing. And that would mean that we don't understand how sinful we are. So we're to be humble in our prayer. Now, Christ here, the Spirit of Christ speaking through David, shows us something else. That is, there is some inherent righteousness, which is Christ's righteousness, because he was actually righteous, 100% innocent. So let my judgment, he appeals, go out from your face. So deal with me. He actually repeats that. According to my righteousness, which is within me, your eyes see uprightly. Okay? And then verse 3 backs that up. Look at verse 3, both in King James and whatever version that you're using. It says that thou hast proved mine heart, thou hast visited me in the night, thou hast tried me, and shall find nothing. I am purposed that my mouth shall not transgress. Okay? Thou hast proved mine heart, thou hast visited me in the night, thou hast tried me, and shall find nothing. The Greek translation of the text says, and have found nothing. So it's basically already the present perfect. So that nothing was found. And remember, Jesus says in the Gospel of John, in me, the devil has nothing. He tried him. He tried him the first time. It was a kind of a preparatory thing in the wilderness for 40 days and 40 nights, and exemplifying the true Israel of God. Christ was in the wilderness, hungering and thirsting, and the devil comes and then begins to tempt him. And Jesus, of course, stood the test. Unlike the first Adam, earthy, who was in a better situation, he was not in the wilderness. He had the abundant supply of everything in the Garden of Eden, in the pristine abundance of everything around him. Nevertheless, he failed, whereas Christ was set in a severe test in this howling wilderness. There was nothing around him, basically just sand and stones, and this heat and cold by night. And he stood against the assaults of the devil. But observe also that thou hast proved my heart, thou hast visited me in the night, thou hast tried me, and shall find nothing. That God uses secondary means to try and test. Basically, there's one word which represents, both in the Greek and in Hebrew, I believe, as far as the tempt and test. So as far as the God testing the righteous, he is testing them in order that their faith, their trust, their loyalty and so forth shall come forth as gold, whereas Satan wants something else, of course. So Satan is tempting, but God is trying his people. He is refining them. He is putting them through this furnace in order that the unshakable and imperishable gold-like quality of the faith and of Christ, of his inherent righteousness, should shine forth even brighter at the backdrop of this outer darkness and this temptation in the wilderness. So he's tried him and found nothing. And this is interesting. The King James says, I am purposed that my mouth shall not transgress. Now, what it actually says, literally, the idea is the same, but listen in Green's literal translation. My thoughts do not pass beyond my mouth. So there's a precise correlation, okay? My inner thoughts match the words of my lips. And this is where all the rest of us mortals fail miserably. We know that we don't always say the same thing as it's on our mind. In point of fact, even one politician of the past, I believe he was a French diplomat, his precise name escapes me now, but he said that the expressed thought in words, the thought worded, is already a lie, because when we try to, put our thoughts in words, we always consider, well, that'll hurt people, whether they'll be hurtful to my own position in the state and so forth. So we want to present our thoughts in a favorable light so that we appear better than we are and so forth. So we put things, we don't mention certain things, and sometimes we outright lie. Whereas Christ, his thoughts do not pass beyond his mouth. So what he says actually is reflexive of what's in his heart. So that's Christ. That is his perfection, real perfection, okay? Unlike us. And this is what I put this title, which is kind of, may appear cheeky, that the prayer of the righteous man availed much. And in parenthesis, Psalm 17, you kind of look at it, what is this talking about? James speaks about us, that the prayer of the righteous man. Yes, that's right. But we must remember that God does hear our prayers, the prayer of the righteous man, the justified man as far as we are concerned. But he only hears our prayers because there was this righteous man, truly righteous, inherently righteous, 100% righteous, who could petition God and pray to him based upon his integrity. You will find nothing. My thoughts do not pass beyond my mouth. As to the doings of man, again, this is Green's, by the words of your lips, I keep from the paths of the violent. My steps have I kept in your tracks, so that my strides have not slipped. We're not going to deal with the whole psalm. It's going to take forever. But he set his course straight in his messianic role of our mediator. He had to be so righteous, and he needed all this help from heaven he could take, and all this ministry of angels and the abundant presence of the Holy Ghost. He was anointed beyond measure because the task before him was so arduous, was so unlike anything else in history, either before or after, that the cross does stick out as the most marvelous and the greatest certainly event in the entire, not only human history, but in the broader, speaking, the all of history of the universe, the cross of Jesus Christ, which he had to undergo. And in this preparation steps, he had to watch it, to walk uprightly, really doing the will of God in all things, and having all things against him, set against him. So my steps have I kept in no tracks, so that my strides have not slipped. So my first point would be that the basis of the prayer is righteousness. It is even works righteousness, as much as it may sound repugnant to you. We've learned, especially Protestants and Reformed and sovereign grace believers, that say, well, it's just by faith, it's not by works and so forth. But fundamentally, the right to be ushered in, or to stand upon the holy hill, Psalm 15, who can stand upon his holy mountain? Only the inherently righteous person. Nobody else can. And that righteousness, they must possess it. They must perform it and actually show it forth in order for them to be able to stand before the thrice holy God. So he has that righteousness. We do not by nature. We appeal to his righteousness. And because this righteous man prayed and very earnestly, keep me as the pupil of the daughter of the eye, hide me in the shadow of thy wings, and so forth. And his prayer was heard on high, and he was delivered from this mire, from all those torrents and waves of the judgment which compassed him round about, and all the hatred, all of this which was swirling around him. He was delivered ultimately through his death first. And another point here that is so evangelical and comforting to us, that he says that you deliver me, he says, from men, by your hand, O Jehovah, from men of the world, whose portion is in this life. And their belly you fill with your treasure. So it's again the providence, when we talk about the common grace and so forth, when we see the wicked prosper and so forth, we must remember that they're being fattened for the day of slaughter. And it's also God's doing. It is providentially. So this opulent people, their belly you fill with your treasure. God is doing that. They're satisfied with sons and live their riches to their babes and to their infants, to their posterity. So they'll live sometimes long and carefree, and they have relatives around them. So it's just basically beautiful as far as this side of heaven. So it's not always, as the book of Job, his three friends that say, well, the wicked will always get, recompensed in this life. If you're righteous, you won't suffer. But the reason, Job, you're suffering, because you must have sinned and you're not confessing it. Otherwise, you would have lived a better life. Basically, that's their argument, the sum of it. So kind of, they were good Pelagians. But no, Job was suffering even though he was righteous, and he never actually admitted that it was for his sin. And the book of Job does not say it. So Job is a good very bright type and picture of Christ himself, who suffers greatly, but not for his sin. And it's kind of enigmatic as far as this life. Why are you suffering? Why do you have to suffer? And see, this echoes, the same thought echoes in Psalm 17. It says that these people, they prosper, okay? As for me, verse 15, the last one, in righteousness I will look upon your face. When I awaken, I shall be satisfied by your image. And this is the ultimate hope of both Christ, the captain of salvation, and should be ourselves. So he's not saying, well, I'm going to prosper in the end, or that I'll have my share of, just the good life. No. As for me, I will behold thy face in righteousness. So his hope was the hope of resurrection, that I will behold thy face, because seeing thy face is better than life, as David says elsewhere. I will behold thy face in righteousness. And again, the reminder, in order to see God's face, you must be righteous. So he had that righteousness, and he knew by faith that he was going to see again the glory of God, which he had from the beginning, once again, after he had finished the course, which he ran by faith again. I will behold thy face in righteousness. I shall be satisfied when I awake. With what? With earthly goods? With material prosperity? No, with thy likeness. And this is very literal. It is with thy image, the imago Dei, the image of God. We don't think, well, what's it? Well, there's a lot to it. But the brightness of his glory, the splendor of his radiance, is like beholding the sun in its full zenith. I shall be satisfied when I awake with thy likeness. Nothing else, basically. If you have God, as they say, you need nothing else. And this is the hope of Christ. And we know for a fact that this psalm, this prophecy, has been fulfilled. And therefore, puny people like myself and you, we have hope. He heard him, the righteous one, and for his name's sake, he will hear even our prayers when we pray to him earnestly. So that then that saying comes true, that the prayer of the righteous man availeth much, because we do have the righteous man who's praying in our behalf, and we rely upon his excellence and upon his perfect intercessions in our behalf. All right, may this be beneficial and encouraging to you guys. That's all I have for today. May God bless you all. See you soon.